Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Anna and I'm a vegan living in London, originally from the US and Japan. And today I wanted to do a slightly different video. It's not really food related, but as you guys know, I am pregnant, and so I wanted to talk a little bit about pregnancy and my experience with it and some of the surprises that I've encountered along the way. I am 36 weeks, nearly 36 weeks. When this video comes out, I will be probably 36 weeks. So I am 9 months pregnant, which means I am almost done with this whole pregnancy thing. So I thought I would make a video about things that surprised me about pregnancy, or things I didn't know about pregnancy before I got pregnant. I wonder how many times I will say the word pregnancy in this video. I've already said it like at least 10 times. So yeah, sorry if you don't really like this kind of content. Obviously, if you don't like it, you're not watching it, but if you are interested in this kind of content, let me know, because I'm like always terrified of getting like a comment like, "Oh, stop talking about the fact that you're pregnant, no one cares," which, yeah, is silly, but anyway, let's get into it. So the number one thing I did not expect, or that I didn't know about being pregnant, is that you actually feel the baby all the time. Like, it's not like, before I was pregnant, I was like, oh, you probably feel the baby like every now and then, you know, maybe once a day, maybe once every few days. But no, I mean, in my case at least, I feel the baby, like I just felt her. She just kicked. But I feel the baby moving constantly. In fact, if I don't feel her like once an hour at least, I tend to get worried, because it's not really typical of her to not move throughout the day consistently. And so yeah, when she doesn't move, like, it's like, what is going on? So yeah, that was really surprising to me, is just how frequently, how strongly you feel the baby's movements. Another thing is that every day is slightly different. Like, no 2 days are the same in pregnancy. Like, it's not like, oh, yesterday I had backache, so tomorrow I'm gonna have backache. Like, oh, she's kicking me really weird. Sorry. It's like every day is slightly different, and you always have different symptoms. Recently, what I found is that I'm getting like nauseous more often, and I'm breathing more heavily, and getting around and doing things is becoming more difficult, which is like, so I just sound like such a typical pregnant lady. But I do feel like in this last like month and a half pregnancy, things really pick up. Like, I didn't even look pregnant, I think, for a really long time. Like, my French class, I have a French class that I go to once a week, and they just realized that I'm pregnant. So yeah, I don't know, I just feel like things like really ramp up in the last month or so. But anyway, that's not what I'm trying to talk about. I'm just trying to say that like every day is different and you discover new things all the time. I mean, it's a good thing and it's a bad thing. Like, it's a good thing in the sense that, you know, what is causing you pain one day probably won't cause you pain forever, throughout the pregnancy at least, and so that's a good thing. The bad side is that it's kind of like, what's coming around the corner? You never know what to expect. So yeah, it's fun. Another thing I didn't know about is the concept of hypnobirthing. I had no idea what this was before I became pregnant, and it sounds really hippy-dippy and weird and like hypnosis kind of woo-woo vibes. But it's really not like that. I mean, hypnobirthing is just a technique that women use to give birth naturally, without epidural or excessive intervention. And essentially it's just, I tend to think of it as like meditation, but for birth. So it's just a way to like refocus your mind, or train your mind to go through birth in as natural a way as possible. So it involves a lot of like breathing techniques, meditation, just working with your body, listening to your body, working with the hormones, learning about what exactly happens when you give birth, because I feel like a lot of women, I mean, this might be just a presumption, but I feel like a lot of women go into childbirth not knowing what their body is going through. And maybe it's just like ignorance is bliss kind of thing. They don't want to know, they'd rather not know, they'd rather just like get the epidural and get it done with. I'm not really sure, but for me at least, it's really comforting to actually know what my body is going through, what to expect. I feel like knowing that really expels a lot of the fears around childbirth, because before I learned about hypnobirthing, I was terrified to give birth. And I was like one of those people that was like, okay, just give me the epidural, because they always say like, you don't get a medal for going through birth without epidural, which I personally dislike that sentiment so much. Because yeah, like obviously you don't get a medal, like everyone knows you don't get a medal, but it's your choice. And if you want the experience of childbirth without pain medication, that's your choice. If you are curious about hypnobirthing, I recommend you look it up. There's tons online about it. Another thing is that before I became pregnant and before I had a belly, I never really understood why pregnant women always have this seemingly compulsive need to touch their stomach. I was like, what is with that? I don't understand. It's weird. Like, why can't you just like be a normal person and not touch your stomach? But I kind of get it now, because like it's just like a natural impulse. Like your baby is there. Sometimes you feel them kicking, so you want to feel it. It's like huge, so I don't know, your hand just like naturally goes there, and it's like kind of comforting, like letting them know you're here for them, and it's comforting for yourself as well. Like, I don't know, I get it now. It's hard to explain. I mean, it's not that hard to explain, but it's just like one of those things that just like naturally happens. Your hand just like gets drawn to this area. Related to this is that I never really feel alone, which is really nice. Like, it's an unexpectedly nice thing about being pregnant, is like I know that there's a human there, and like she's with me all the time. I'm never alone. I can talk to her if I want to. Like, you kind of don't feel lonely when you're pregnant, because I don't know, like there is a spirit, there's a human body inside of you. So it's kind of impossible to feel alone. And you feel their presence all the time anyway. So yeah, it's kind of nice. Like on nights where Joseph is, you know, doing something and I'm just like chilling by myself, I'll just feel her. I'll like think about her. Yeah, it's kind of like one of those things that's like always in the back of your mind, that you don't necessarily think about all the time, but when you do realize it, it's like really comforting to know that like, oh yeah, I have somebody else next to me all the time, literally inside me all the time. Also, particularly in the third trimester, I did not expect the amount of burping that I do. I burp so much, especially at night, but like after meals, I am burping all the time, and it's like really nasty, and it's just like a symptom of my stomach, what do you call it? Heartburn and what is it called? Stomach acid? No, I don't think that's right. Anyway, it's like heartburn symptoms where you just burp all the time. And yeah, it's not very nice, but I've become a burpy lady, and I really hope it passes once the baby's out, because it's really uncomfortable, and I feel bad for Joseph, who has to hear me burping all the time. I also didn't expect comments about my body during pregnancy to bother me as much as they do. Like, I've heard people say, oh, you're so small, or I've heard people say, oh, like, you're really showing. Mostly the first one. Mostly people say I'm really small. And like, it doesn't offend me, but it does like weigh on my mind more than I thought it would. Like, oh, should I be bigger? Like, is there something wrong with me? It just made me realize that, yeah, whenever, like, I really want to refrain from making any comments about another pregnant person's body, because I know that it can be like off-putting or just kind of like make them question themselves. And it's really hard not to do it, because like obviously like you see a pregnant woman and you have these thoughts, or like you have these expectations, and you tell them about it, right? Like, it's really hard to like hold back, and especially if you're not pregnant yourself, if you've never been pregnant yourself, you don't know how those comments affect you. So I understand why people do it and I don't hold it against them, but I think it's just like better to not do that because you don't know how they're gonna take it. Another thing is that, I don't know if it's just me, but I feel my stomach pulse like really strongly all the time. And I think it's like because there's a big artery that goes, and it could also be my placenta. My midwife told me it could be my placenta that's beating, which is pretty crazy. But there are a lot of like blood vessels and arteries and stuff in this stomach region. So that's probably why, and like the amount of blood you pump increases significantly when you're pregnant. But it's kind of scary. Like I feel my stomach pulse so strongly. It's a bit scary sometimes, and that's something I did not know would happen. And then lastly, I'll just end on something that happened a lot in my first trimester, is that I would often forget that I was pregnant. Like I would be doing things, because like when you're in your first trimester, especially for someone like me who didn't have like nausea or any of like the typical first trimester symptoms, I forgot that I was pregnant all the time. I mean, I never like drank alcohol or like smoked a cigarette or something, but I would like be jumping around, or like I would just forget all the time that I was pregnant. And I think it's because like you don't see them, you don't feel them. There's nothing to kind of like validate the fact that you're pregnant other than the fact that like, you know, you don't get your period, or like, I don't know, maybe you have other symptoms. But I think for, at least for me in the first trimester, what surprised me was that like, yeah, how much I would just like forget that I was pregnant, and it was almost like kind of scary sometimes, because I would feel like, is this real? Like, am I really pregnant? A lot of the time I was like questioning my reality. So yeah, that was kind of surprising. Now there's no way to forget, you know, like I feel her all the time, I see it, I have all these symptoms, I'm tired, blah, blah, blah. So obviously I don't forget now, but there was a long time, weeks and weeks and weeks, where it didn't feel real. And that would kind of, yeah, just lead me to forget that I was pregnant. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I feel like I just like rattled off a bunch of things really fast, and I don't know if this was interesting at all, but thank you for watching, thank you for listening. If you are pregnant, let me know. I'd love to hear from my fellow pregnant ladies. And yeah, I don't know how my content is gonna look going forward once I have this baby. Follow along. Thanks again, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!